Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, chairman of Pakistan People's Party, joins me now live from Islamabad. It's good to have you. I know you've endorsed Sharif's appointment. There are reports that you're being eyed as Pakistan's new foreign minister. Can you confirm that?
No, I can't confirm that, but absolutely, we worked with a coalition government to oust Mr. Khan through a no-confidence motion. He tried to thwart our moves through what amounts to a constitutional coup, but the Supreme Court of Pakistan decided against him, and ultimately Parliament managed to finish the democratic process and vote him out of office.
Out of interest, would your party be happy with you becoming foreign minister under a prime minister not from your own party?
I'm sure that would be something difficult for my party to stomach, being the second largest member of the coalition. But obviously, we do have to work together to address Pakistan's problems, and whatever my party decides in the better interest of the country, of course, I would follow decisions.
At this point, you don't see a future for you in this administration, but you're saying it would be up to the party.
At this point, all political parties that are in our alliance that defeated Imran Khan must work together for the restoration of democracy, work towards electoral reforms, and try to address the economic issues that you mentioned in your introduction.
Which I do want to address because the country is a mess. Before I do that, Imran Khan is demanding immediate elections, he says, to let the people decide whom they want as their prime minister. You have said democracy has won, and you have appealed to the youth that democracy is the best revenge. So do you support Khan's call for free and fair elections, early elections, if needs be?
We absolutely want free and fair elections, but in order to have free and fair elections, we must legislate on electoral reforms. Because as everybody knows, the 2018 elections that Khan used to come to power have been widely seen and condemned, not only nationally, but internationally, as rigged and compromised elections that resulted in 3 years of autocratic dictatorial rule through the office of Mr. Imran Khan, who not only robbed our media of media freedoms, but robbed average Pakistanis of democratic rights that we just recently started to enjoy in the 10 years before Mr. Khan came to power. So indeed, it is a big victory for democracy that we are moving towards electoral reforms and free and fair elections. We're not a selected government like Mr. Khan's, but a government that is truly representative of the people of Pakistan can decide their fate.
Imran Khan does still enjoy huge popular support. He tweeted a day ago the following, starting with "Never have such crowds come out so spontaneously and in such numbers in our history, rejecting the imported government led by crooks." Those protests, he claims, are against a US-backed regime change. He is right to point out there were massive, massive protests, demonstrations of support. That tweet alone garnered 7.2 million views. What are your thoughts on his belief that his ouster is all part of a US-orchestrated conspiracy?
I think that the American people will be able to relate to what Pakistan is going through right now. Pakistan just recently experienced our equivalent to your January 6th moment, where Mr. Khan, despite knowing that he had lost his majority in parliament, tried acting through his speaker to conduct a constitutional coup and thwart that process. And he's come up with this big lie of an international conspiracy led by the United States to oust him. When the fact is, he's the first prime minister in the history of Pakistan to be ousted through democratic constitutional means, and this is a massive victory for Pakistan's democracy. As far as his support is concerned, of course, little fascists all over the world enjoy their cult following, but that does not mean that the majority of Pakistan should be dictated to by these fascist regimes.
Okay, but let's be quite clear, though. He does retain enormous popular support. His tenure as Prime Minister was characterized by the shift away from the West and the move closer to China and indeed to Russia. President Biden didn't call him during his 3.5-year tenure. Khan's criticism of Washington and the West, frankly, bought him a lot of popular support inside the country. Do you see Pakistan's relationship with Washington now changing under Shehbaz Sharif? And if so, how?
If you allow, I'll answer all three parts of your question. As far as Mr. Khan's support in the public is concerned, even though we criticized the last elections as heavily rigged, according to those rigged election results, which Mr. Khan calls the most free and fair elections in Pakistan's history, Mr. Khan's position in parliament represents 30% of the people of Pakistan's votes, whereas our coalition represents 70% of the people of Pakistan's votes. Right. So that's as far as Mr. Khan's popularity is concerned. As far as Mr. Khan, Pakistan's relationship with the West or any other country, Mr. Imran Khan, despite being extremely anti-American in his rhetoric when he's out of government, when he was in government and Mr. Trump was the president of the United States, he enjoyed very cordial relations with Mr. Trump. It is true that since President Biden has taken over and following the complexities in Afghanistan, there has been difficulties between U.S. and Pakistan relations. But Mr. Khan is manipulating the series of events to try and create this perception that there is some grand conspiracy, when the fact of the matter, there is none. Our decision to bring a vote of no confidence was taken much before Mr. Khan's visit to Russia on the eve of the Ukrainian crisis. And we had no way of knowing that Mr. Khan would go and shake President Putin's hand as he was invading Ukraine, and as a result, there would be some sort of friction in foreign policy. But because Mr. Khan was removed through a democratic process, because he doesn't have any narrative that allows him to be presented as a victim, he is relying on Pakistani's general anti-American sentiment and trying to provoke a very dangerous situation where he's declared 70% of the parliamentarians that represent 70% of the people's mandate as traitors unilaterally, and is going down a very dangerous path. America has had 200 years of democracy to sustain the pressures of this sort of attack. Pakistan's democracy is very young, it's very new, and Mr. Khan's assault through his big lie and fascist tendencies is indeed a threat to our society.
Let me put this to you: it is a young country. It's a young democracy. Sharif is the brother of former deposed Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. You yourself are part of one of Pakistan's leading political families and the son of two former a Prime Minister and a president. Some would say that is what is wrong with Pakistani politics, this sort of dynasty family politics. Right or wrong?
Absolutely, dynasties exist. I mean, I would think it's unfair to criticize former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton for being involved in politics because her husband involved in politics, etc.
No, that's not a good answer. No, it was a really important question. It's a really important question.
Criticize nepotism and dynastic politics as much as you want, but whoever the people of Pakistan decide, that is what at the end of the day should matter. As far as Mr. Khan is concerned, his entire party is full of dynasts. Him himself, his children may be underage and not involved in politics at the moment, but in his provincial governments, in his federal representations and his party representations, he relies heavily on Pakistani dynasts. As far as myself is concerned, my grandfather was hanged by a military dictator. My mother was assassinated by terrorists and a dictator's connivance. And I was forced into Pakistani politics at a young age. I didn't choose this life, it chose me. But for whatever reason one is doing politics, we believe in democracy and that the people should decide. Mr. Khan likes to talk about democracy when in fact he believes in rigging elections and coming to power.